All right, so we'll go ahead and jump into the challenges. So this is session 9. This is kind of a review session. So again, happy to answer any questions that you have while we're going over this. Anything throughout basically the culmination of class, any questions that you have for me about what it's like to be a software developer, or what your next steps might be, questions about code Platoon. There are no slides for this evening. So if not, we'll just be tackling challenges and answering questions. So again, apologize for the coughs in my voice. I am on the mend, but I'm still a little bit under the weather. All right, so we're going to go ahead and tackle the repeated characters. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and do this. So I think I had said last week that the last night here, instead of doing it in Replit, I was going to do it in VS Code just so you can kind of see what it looks like. All right, so let's go ahead and copy some of our stuff over here. And I'll make this. Is this a good size for everyone, or do you need it larger? Okay.
It works for me now that I have my spare monitor working.
All right. All right, so we're going to get 2 parameters. So our first one is an array of strings. Okay, so as far as pseudocode, I know that I'm going to need. And I'm going to need. So line 12 and 13. So write a method that takes an array of characters and similar length array of integers. So if we have an array with four or three letters in it, we're going to have a corresponding array with three numbers in it. If we get four, we'll have four, right? So the problem set is saying that these two will always be the same, right? The same length. And that's because we're basically going through, and so like our resulting string from ABC 1, 2, 3 should have one A in it, two B's in it, and three C's in it. Right. And so like HELO 1121 spells out hello. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look here. So we can go ahead and console.log char array. All right, we get it down here. So we see the ABC and the HELO. And there's our num arrays. Now, see how these are changing colors? So that's telling me that I'm using it, right? So if I take this away, I'm not using either of them. So you shouldn't have a function that takes a parameter that isn't used during the function call. And so this is just VS Code trying to help me out. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. We can say for let I equal 0, I less than, and we can call it char array.length or num array.length. It doesn't matter because they're always both going to be the same length. Run this again. Oops. It did not put my iterator in here. All right, so unexpected token. It's telling me I've just got this closing bracket that's giving me a heads up that basically there's no argument in there. right? So there's my letters. There's my numbers. And we're going to, let's see here. This, and so if we take our result and create our array here, and we could just do something like result dot push. Oops. Right, so we're already almost there. And so we're pushing each letter in one time, right? So what would possibly be the next step so that we can push it in the appropriate amount of times based on what we get from num array? Anyone want to take a stab at that? Is there a repeat method? I have not heard of that before, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Counts chorus because I'm happy. Chorus dot repeat 27 times. We probably could solve this with the repeat method. I honestly did not know that that existed until you just said it. So yeah, we could definitely take a look at that as well. Let's see here. So we could say dot repeat and then give it num array I. Let's see what that does for us. That pretty much solves it. So nope, not -1. I think we're good there because we're telling it repeat one time, repeat one time, repeat twice, repeat one time. All right, and then all we have to do here is that. And there's our solution. So yes, I honestly had never repeated, never caught my eye before, but absolutely a valid solution. And I mean, better than the one I was going to do, because basically the way I traditionally solve this is just to do a nested loop. So we could say for let j equals 0, j less than num array I, and then j plus plus, and then we just do a result dot push char array I. Right, and this hopefully will do the same thing. Right, and so this is basically the built-in way of doing this. So I would say this is preferred. It's less code, but this is like solving it with a nested loop. So nice job on that one. So we can comment this out. I'll tell you what, Leo, you've already been accepted into Tango. You graduate, you come back and you can take this class over for me. So they're actually talking about switching this over to start teaching it in Python. And I honestly haven't used much Python since I graduated from Code Platoon, so I don't know if they are going to make that switch, then someone who's a little bit more proficient in Python than me might start teaching this, but we'll see what they've actually got planned for it. All right, so we'll call this good. And what I'll do is, even though I solved this in VS Code, I'm going to grab this, copy it. I'll fork the replit. And we'll take our solution and dump it right here. That way I can still share it with the class and run it. We still get our answer. All right, so we're good to go there. Any questions on any of this? Okay, so let's see here. Okay, Chris, have a good night. All right, so let's look at another one here. So it looks like we could take a peek at number of characters. Okay, so write a function that takes in a string of lowercase characters and returns an object containing the count for each letter in the string. All right, so this is a good one. Let's go ahead and fork the replit. This. This is called number of characters. A feeling when you're typing or teaching a class and you can hear your cat destroying everything you own right behind you.
At least you don't have a macaw trying to do that.
So I don't know. He just like darted in here and then darted back out. Now I can hear him like throwing something around out there. So I'll have to, the next break I take, I'll have to find. Our house is trashed. Like I don't know if you can see behind me, but like those are the cabinets. Like I can't even get in and out of the bedroom all the way because like I live in a 3-family and we're remodeling the top unit and everything's behind schedule. So like our whole kitchen is like sitting in the living room in this unit. And it's basically like the world's most expensive cat condo. The cats love it. Like they're in and out of like all of these uninstalled cupboards and they're all wrapped in plastic. So it makes all sorts of noise. And like our youngest is like 2 years old and he was a foster and he was a foster kitten that the existing fosters couldn't handle. And we fostered like 40 or 50 cats. So we would get like some medical fosters and like the really nasty, like feral kittens that like weren't ready to be adopted out yet. And he was one of the really nasty feral kittens. And like in this random Dollar Tree pack of like cat toys, there was like one toy that he was willing to play with, and it was like this little rubber ball with all these fingers on it. And I only ever saw it like one time at Dollar Tree, and like he would find this thing and then he would lose it because like it would fit under doors or underneath like cabinets or whatever. And like we'd do like a spring cleaning and like find it and throw it, and like he'd go nuts for like a day and then like lose it again. And I finally figured out what it was called and like did a exact search for it on Amazon, and I bought him like a 300 pack of them. And they are all completely gone, or they were all completely gone as of last week. There's like 300 balls swirled around the house. And like every couple of months, like I'll pull out like the printer stand and the couch and open up the furnace room and just like shovel them all out. And he just like loses his mind again because he's like basically found his hidden stash. But um so like the last couple nights again, because like my wife was traveling for work and I was sick and like wasn't getting out of bed. So like the cats weren't getting any attention. I'd wake up in the middle of the night or in the morning and I'd have like 12 of them in bed with me because like he would just keep bringing them to me and like want me to play with them. But like he obsesses over these things and he plays fetch with them because like I mean you can just sit there, like if you're sitting on the couch, he'll bring them up to you. You throw him the length of the house, he goes, scrambles and gets it and brings it back. But I'll grab one if I can find one when I take my next break and show you. But it's like the world's greatest cat toy.
That's funny.
All right, so let's.
So you now own him, though you're not fostering him any longer, correct?
So the black and white guy that you saw that went by, that was Todd. He's our old guy. I adopted him and his brother from the Arizona Humane Society. His brother passed away last July.
Oh.
And out of, like I said, the 40 some odd cats we fostered, Todd hated every single cat except for his brother. Like, I mean, I watched him Lion King a kitten one time. Like Todd rules the top of the cat condo, and this little kitten tried to get up there with him, and Todd hooked a back leg under this kitten's stomach and just like pitched him out of the cat condo. And it's like, dude, what are you doing? And Nugget, who was by a mile like the worst kitten we ever had. We've had like some bad kittens and adult cats because we did a lot of TNR recovery. So the trap neuter return. So like a lot of the kittens we got weren't like nice kittens that like people couldn't adopt out, or like my house cat had kittens. Like these were like street kittens and they were ready to cut you. And
then some.
Yeah. And so like Nugget would like attack my wife. And yeah, he was all sorts of messed up. The first day, like he laid into me, he bit me like multiple times in my hand, like profusely bleeding. and like pooped and peed on me like all in one go, like just trying to
Yep.
transfer from the cage to the holding pen. And Todd liked him. And I don't know if it's because of he gave me the business or what, but like PD had already had like some medical issues, and like we kind of knew he was on his way out, and we didn't know how Todd was going to take it. And Nugget kind of inserted himself into that crew. So like basically when PD passed away, we weren't sure if we were going to be able to adopt Nugget out because he was like, he still is like, I mean, you can pet him the right way and he loves you, like he purrs, like he's super friendly, but he's got this thing that if you reach directly towards his face, like he'll still take
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
Kathy,
Kudos
so
to you.
yeah, no, we love it. And if we ever get our house done, I know I'm older, but for any of the people that have ever seen the Tom Hanks movie, The Money Pit, I'm currently at the stage of my remodel where I'm having the nervous laughter breakdown into crying. Like that's where we've been for the past couple months.
But yeah, Kathy's question, what does your wife do for
Yeah,
travel?
so my wife is basically, she's currently a VCSO for a consulting firm, which is a virtual chief information security officer, which is one of the newer C-suite roles where obviously because of hacking and honestly like cyber terrorism on the rise, like I mean, you now have like chief information officers, but now you also have chief information security officers. So that's what she does. She works for a consulting firm and basically works with a lot of mid-tier companies that can't necessarily afford to have their own like on-staff CISO. And so she gets paid as a consultant to basically put out company level cybersecurity like prevention and response plans. She's the smarter of the two of us, so she's operating at a much higher level than I am, so which I'm okay with. I just write the code. But no, so like she was just in North Dakota last week, and the week before that she was in Washington DC basically visiting like client sites and like a lot of banking and like financial institutions and the companies that are at elevated risk, and also a lot to lose with cybersecurity issues.
Hospitals right now are really a target as well.
Yeah, hospitals, elementary schools, because they've got your social security number and no one, like, I mean, can't pay teachers, you sure as heck aren't paying your IT staff, so. But yeah, no, that's prior to what she was doing now. She was actually at the same company, and she was on basically was DFIR, which was a digital forensics incident response. So basically, like if you did get hacked, like her team was the team that came in and like collected hardware and data to find out what happened. And basically because like most companies at this point will have some form of like cybersecurity insurance, and it's getting harder and harder to get because of like the increase in the prevalence of attacks. But the insurance company isn't just going to pay out because you said something bad happened. Like they're going to want like a full basically like forensic investigation of how you got hacked, why you got hacked, what was the information you actually got compromised, and most importantly, like what are you going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again in the future. And then before that, she was in IT governance. Yeah, determining liability is not fun. Yes, no, she stays on top of that, so let's see here. All right, sorry, that was a big aside. Cats and spouses, but that's what.
Oh, cats are fun to hear about.
Yeah. Let's see here. So we're going to write a function that takes in a string of lowercase characters and returns an object containing the count of each letter in the string. So we're getting one parameter, and that is just going to be a string of all lowercase characters. I can tell my medicine's already kicking in. I can talk again. And so our return, so I see the curly braces here, and I see the key value pair. So that's telling me we're going to return an object. Okay, so I need to so before I do that, so let's think about this. So I'm going to need a loop so I can iterate through my string. I'm going to need a object to hold my character and character count. I'm also going to need an if statement. All right. Any questions about my pseudocode that I've written here? All right, so I know I'm going to need a loop so I can iterate through my string. Right, and so strings have index values just like arrays do. Technically, I could split it out into an array, but that's just an unnecessary step because I'm not going to be mutating anything. And I'll need an object to hold my key value pairs. And then I'm going to need an if statement because if it's the first time I run into a new letter, basically I need to add it as a key and then add a count of 1. But remember, keys are unique. So every time after that, instead of adding a new letter, like I'm going to find the existing letter and I'm going to increment by 1. And so that way, that's how we end up with the higher counts. All right. So if there's no questions with that, we can go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and take a look at our string. Oops, you don't need to code it. We need to note it. Notify module, did I not save this? There we go. There it is. So there's our string down here. And so let's go ahead and create our empty object there. Now let's go ahead and do our for loop. Right, and so because strength has index, or string has index, string will also have a length. So now we should be able to see each individual character here. Right, so there's all of the characters in our thing right here. And so next, we're going to want to go ahead and add these in to our result. So we can take this out here and we can say result string I equals 1. Let's go ahead and run. Whoops, we don't need to. We'll want to return result down here. And then we'll want to wrap this in a console.log. All right, so a B, a D, an A, and a C, a B, a D, and an A, and a C, but we're not counting yet. So, because we're just adding it in and giving it the value of 1. All right. So for our if statement here, what do we want? Like, what do we want to build our if statement on? Like, what are we making our decision based off of? Anyone want to take a stab at that? So not how many times the letter appears. So it has something to do with result. Right, I'm going to be checking result for something. Right, if we look up here, what determines that? Well, so not if the key value is more than 1 or not, but basically what we're looking for is the key in here, right? And so how do we check to see if an object has a key? Right, so we can do is property name an object, right? We can also do object dot has own property. Right, so those are like the 2 main ways of doing that, right? So here I'm going to say result dot has own property, and we're going to see if string I is in there or not, right? And if that is true, we want result string I be plus equal 1. Right, and if not, then we want it to be set to 1. And I think that plus equal 1 works there, and I see I've got a typo in property. I've got a bigger typo. All right, so let's see what that gets us. So 1, 2, 3, 1. So right, so that's what we're doing here, right? So we're saying if it has this property already, then find it and increment the value by 1. If it doesn't have it, create it and assign it a value of 1. Right, and so we're splitting based on the fact of if that key is in there or not. Right, and so within the for loop, we can do something like this too. Like we can watch it happen, right? So we can say console.log result, right? And this will give us a lot of output, right? But see, we're building it, right? So there's B is 1, and then the next iteration through we hit D, right? And then we get there, we get here, and then we hit that second D, hit the second A, we hit the third A, right, and so on as we go through there. And so we're just basically making the decision of if it's not there, create it. If it is there, increment it. Any questions about this one? Okay, so let me go ahead and copy this. That there. Still runs. And I mean, I guess the only other thing we could really do with this is right, so we could do a little trick here. So it looks like we could do a all in place. We could do a split, a sort, and then a join. And so we could say string equals string dot split dot sort dot join. I think they were both just, yep, empty strings. Right, and now we get them in alphabetical order. So, which is again, not part of the challenge, but and this basically creates your object as the like as it occurs with each letter. And so when we do that, we actually just take all of the characters in the string, we split it to an array. Array has a dot sort built in on it, and then we join it back together in a string, all in one chain, so like all in one motion on the same line. And then we start to go through string and check it so that basically we'd be building this in alphabetical order. So we're not building a string from the object. Well, we don't need, like, within the challenge, that's not what we're being asked to do. Right, so we're being asked to go through, like, we're being given an input of a string and being asked to return an object, right? And the key value pair is each individual character, unique character, will be a key, and then the value is how many times that occurs. So if you were looking to reverse something like this, then you would basically loop through and, like, I mean, so we can take a look at result here, right? So result's been built. So we can console.log, right? So we can see result A, and that should return a 3, right? So there, right? And so you could, there is like a, oh, I have to go back to the slide deck here, but there is, like, because I can never remember if it's the, all the way back up to the top. Operators, functions, loops. All right. So for an object, we could do a for n, right? So let key an object. Right. So we could take this syntax and so we could say for so let key in result, right? And so if we console.log key, right, there's our keys. And if we console.log result, whoops, box key, right, we get that, right? So doing that same thing that Leo had us do, right? So like we could do something like key console.log key dot repeat result key, right? And there we get the multiple repeats of it. So, and I'll leave this in here and comment it out. All right. Cool. So any other questions about the number of characters? All right. So let's see here. Current grade. All right, so write a method that takes in a student object with attributes GPA as a number and grade level as a number, as well as an integer representing the change in their GPA. This method should update the student's GPA to include the change and the increase in their grade level by 1 year and should return an updated student object. Okay, so this is a pretty decent one too for working with objects. So we'll take a look at this one and we'll take a short break, and then when we come back, we'll do the employee data one. And that should take us fairly close to the end of class, and the employee data will probably be the last challenge unless anyone else has got something else they want to look at. And I'll answer any questions anyone has, and then if we don't quite make it to 9 o'clock, it won't be the end of the world tonight. So let's go ahead and fork the replet. So here for right now. All right. All right, so this is one of the more complex parameters that we've gotten so far, right? Like we're actually getting an object as an input here. So we're getting two. First is a object that includes grade and GPA as keys with numbers as values, and a number that indicates the change in the student's yearly GPA. All right, and we're going to return an object that represents the student's new GPA and grade level. All right, example is C below. All right, so I will need to take two actions to solve this. One, I will need to increment the grade level. It didn't see it on the list that he said, but I could have missed that. Sum of negatives, range, largest error, hot potato, car trip. Did he maybe miss one? Any seconds? Okay, so you guys did do this one yesterday? Okay,
Sorry, I had my mouth full of food. Yeah, we did, I believe.
okay, well, we can scrap this one then.
I think one thing that might help though is I think both of you had different ways in doing things and just actually, and I can't speak for everyone else in the class, so speak up. But seeing how you address a problem versus Guillermo, that was also, I felt, helpful. It just shows how many ways you can go about solving these problems.
Yeah, if you want me to finish walking through this one, I can, so.
I'm okay with you doing so, but I'll let everyone else decide.
Okay,
Don't need you to. It's just watching how you're setting it up and then executing it.
was Guillermo doing the prep?
He wasn't as thorough as you, and and I kind of called him on it, but he did do the prep, but he also was kind of doing it well, mapping out the problem. So it just showed how
Okay.
you two have a different style,
No,
if you will.
It is funny. I mean, like, you're not ratting him out. It's just like I didn't used to do the prep. He's the one that showed me this, so he
Uh-huh.
better be doing it. But no, I've found that this is really helpful. So, all right, so we'll continue with this then. So 2 actions to solve this. I'm going to need to increment the grade level by 1 year, and I'm going to need to add, subtract the GPA change to the GPA. All right. And so this one, I mean, because there's no looping, this one isn't that terrible of a problem. So let's go ahead and take a look at this here. So it's console.log student, and what is the second one called? Improvement or lack thereof. That's a bad variable name. Save it. Right, so there's all of our information right there. Right, and so if I want to get more granular, right, so I can look at student grade. And then I can also look at student GPA. Right, and there's all 3 of the things that I need right there. Right, and so I can start by just modifying each thing that I need to do. So I can say student grade is going to be plus equal 1. Right, student GPA, because they're actually giving us a negative number, I can just add it each time. Right, improvement, even if it's not an improvement. And then I can return student. And let's go ahead and wrap these guys in console.log. Right, and let's go ahead and take a look at this. All right, so now our 10th grader is in the 11th grade, and their 2.5 is bumped up to a 2.8, and our 6th grader is now in the 7th grade, and their GPA is dropped from a 4 to a 3.4. Right, so no looping, no conditional logic in this one, just manipulating an object. All right, so it is 7:43. So let's go ahead and take a 7-minute break here. And so at 7:50, we'll start back up and we'll get into the employee data problem. And that one usually takes like, I don't know, half hour to 45 minutes to work through, depending on questions. But yeah, let's go ahead. I'm going to pause the recording. All right. So this is employee data. This is probably one of the more difficult challenges, is the most difficult challenge that is in the list of the intro to coding challenge list. So it's the last one before the recursion, and the recursion ones are kind of off in their own category. So this one builds on all of the stuff that we learned in the other ones. So we're going to be working with objects, arrays, and loops, as well as some conditional logic in here as well. So let's go ahead and go over the problem set here. So you're a new programmer at your company. Your CFO needs some data regarding all the employees. Your CFO needs to know the number of employees per job title, the average salary for that job title within the company, the average bonus that the job title receives within the company, and the average total compensation for that job title. You're given an array of objects that represent all of the employees in the company. You need to parse through all of the employee data and return an array of objects that represents each job title and the corresponding compensation data, including title, total employees, average salary, average bonus, and average total comp. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at the data that we're given. All right. So this is the employee data, right? And so if we look in here, we get a name, excuse me, a name, a title, a salary, and a bonus, right? For each individual in here. So we've got Joe, Kelly, Joan, Amber, Tom, Sarah, Chris, right? So parameters, what we're given is an array of objects. Each object represents an employee. And that includes name, title, salary, and bonus. Excuse me. All right. And we need to return an array of objects. Oops. Each object represents the position at the company. And that is going to have title, total employees, average of the salary, average of the bonus, and average total comp. And we say see below, right? And so this is what it's going to look like when we're done with it. And so if we look at this, so if we take this and this, right? So they're both going to have the title, right? So name can be discarded. All right, so the only thing that really carries over between the straight across is title, right? And so total number of employees we're going to need to create. So right now we don't track that anywhere. It's not inside the object. But we're going to need to start doing that. All right, and then same thing here. So for average salary and average bonus, so that is going to be calculated from the total number of employees that we have in each position. And then average total comp is just these two added together. All right, so this problem can be broken into two main phases. Phase, excuse me, is parsing the incoming employee data array. Objects. And discard name. So has anyone solved this problem yet, or has anyone taken a stab at it yet?
I have not.
Nobody? Okay. So so we can get rid of name because we don't need it in the final output here. So we need to start storing information by position, basically, right? So like all of this or all of these correspond to people who are developers. All of this information corresponds to people who are product managers and designers. So it looks like there's going to be three positions that we're going to be keeping track of. And of those three positions, it looks like we've got 7 employees total, right? Spread out over the three positions. So we need to devise a way to take information out of the basically the object for each employee and then store it in a object for each position. And so if we take a look at this, right, so like if we come back to here, right, so number of characters, remember, so like we were going through and we only had to do it for a string, we weren't doing it for an object, but we were making a split decision on if we encountered something the first time or if we weren't encountering it for the first time, what were we going to do differently, right? So this will probably be useful as we start to parse through here and we encounter a position for the first time and we need to capture some information. And then each subsequent time we encounter that position, we're going to treat the information a little bit differently. Let's go ahead and so we can discard the name and let's create a key value pair. Key will be equal to the position. I guess I think they call it title. Value will be equal to an array that is the comp, the bonus, and the count. Right? And so it will look something like this, where we have programmer 110 put the comma in there to make it easier to read. 30 and 1. Right, so this is what will look like, right? And then we can just keep adding additional key value pairs in here for each. Right, so we can have designer, and then have one for, what was that? Product manager. All right. So I know that I'm going to need a loop to iterate through the employee data. I will need conditional logic to treat the first time I see a position differently than each subsequent time. All right. And I will need an object to hold all of my KVPs. Let's move this up here. All right, so that should be it for phase 2. Is then we're going to need to right, and so before we get too far into phase 2, let's go ahead and take care of phase 1 and see if we can get basically an object that we can then use to tackle phase 2. And we'll come back up here and then we'll pseudocode out phase 2 once we have a better idea of what we're looking at here. Any questions about the pseudocode that I typed out so far?
No questions.
All right, so let's go ahead and get a start here. We'll console.log our employees, and let's go ahead and call our function. Get employee data with, what do they call this up here? Employee data. Oops, because I did code in that node. All right, so here is our array of objects, right? So square bracket means array. Each element in the array is an object that has name, title, salary, and bonus. And we have our 7 elements in here, right? So dot length. No, 7 employees that we're working with. All right. So we know that we need to create an object to hold everything. So let's say parsed employees. All right, and so this will just be an empty object. And we know that we're going to be adding values to this. So let's say for let I equal 0, I less than R of employees dot length. and I plus plus. And let's go ahead and console.log R of employees I. All right, and so now notice how we don't have the curly or the square brackets anymore. We're no longer in the array. We're actually outputting each individual thing. So if I just want to console.log one of these traits or one of these key value pairs in here, what do I need to do? Anyone want to take a guess? All right, so we're gonna do something right here. Yeah, so I won't use dot notation, but basically the same thing. I'm going to tack it on to this, right? So I can say title, right? And if I do this now, right, I just get the titles. If I change this to salary, right, there's my salaries. All right, so let's go ahead and just like we did with the number of characters, right? Like before I started to worry about the account, like I just wanted to get everything in there once. So we can say oops, parsed employees title equals, and we're going to create an array here, right? And so we can now say, let's give it the salary, the bonus, and the count. Right, and so let's go ahead and change this to salary. We'll change this to bonus. Oops, no capitals. And there's the count. And then I've got to, let's go ahead and console.log parsed employees. Right, and so now we see one for each of them, and it's not the correct value because we're not doing anything incremental here. We're just copying over the top of the other one. So basically, like the first time we find developer, we plug this information in. The second time we find developer, we just copy over the top of it. But we're finding that we hit our three things here, right? And so now this kind of becomes our else case, right? And so if we come back in here and same thing with number of characters. In fact, we can just come right over here and grab this, right? So we can say if we'll close that and we'll get rid of this and we'll say R of employees, I title, right? And this will become parsed employees. Okay? And so this will become, if it already has the own property, right? If it doesn't, this becomes our else case, which is what we want. So we'll take this and throw this down here, right? And so now we just need to come up with our true case. And so remember, when we were doing it here, we were assigning it an initial value. Here, we were incrementing it, right? And so let's go ahead up here. We basically need to increment salary. We need to increment the bonus, and we need to increment the employee count. Right, and so let's go ahead and take a look at in here before we, let's see, there's nothing in if, so I think if I run this, it should still run. Yep, so we still get that. So in parsed employees, right? So like if we look at that and we say parsed employees title, oops, I'm sorry, it wouldn't be title anymore, it'd be developer. Right, we just get that, right? And so as we come through here, instead of just, so basically here we're just assigning it the value, but here we have to say parsed employees are of employees I, and oh, let's see here. And let's call this 0. And let's go ahead and console log this and see what happens. Let's see what that looks like. And then we don't need to console.log that. To our employees, let's get rid of that. Now let's see what that looks like. All right, so we've got undefined, so sorry, I got a little lost on this one. So let's see. So if we hit this, that's what I did wrong. So it's still I, and then title here. Let's see if that gives me something. Okay, it does. And now if I throw a 0 here, oh, not there, down here, there. All right, so there's that. And so notice how, I mean, I got a little lost there, and this is why I like doing this one in VS Code, because there are so many brackets involved. And if you're trying to do this in Replit, like you don't get the color coding help, and you get different answers versus putting it from here to, like, if I put it there, right? Like, and it can get pretty easy to lose track of yourself. So here, the 125, that means I know I'm hitting on the big numbers, I'm on the salary, right? And so now, instead of console.logging it, I can say parsed employee 0, and we can say plus equals, and we are going to do R of employee I salary, right? And now we're actually incrementing it. And so let's go ahead and console.log this again. Right, and so now I'm seeing larger numbers for this, right? So 382, 202, 164.5. Right, and so those numbers look good to me. We haven't averaged anything yet, but it looks like, I mean, just doing the rough math here, right? Like 382 divided by 3 is 127, 101, so 202, right? So we're good there, right? And now we basically just need to repeat each of these steps, right? So, and again, because we built a key value pair where the key is the title and then the value is an array, right? So we're going in to our array and we're incrementing each one by accessing the index, right? So 0 is the salary, 1 is the bonus, right? And so we're adding bonus to it. And then lastly will be in the 2 index position will be the count. And we don't actually have anything to draw on there, so it's just plus equal 1. Right, and so now if we run this, right, so there's our totals for our salary, our bonus, and our employee count, right? And that is pretty much it for the parsing phase of this, right? So we've parsed all of the data that we needed. So we've got what we need so that we can calculate our title, our number of employees, our average salary, our average bonus, and our average total comp. All right. Any questions on any of the stuff that we did to get through phase 1 of this problem? And I know this is big and ugly, and like we're manipulating arrays and objects at the same time, and it can look confusing. And again, we post this so you can review it. And like I said, I've been coding this thing like 3 times a year for 2 years now, and I still get tripped up on it. So don't sweat it. If it's confusing, but please, if you've got questions, like don't hesitate to ask them. All right, so phase 2. So constructing the output object. So Okay, so as far as phase two of this, where we're constructing the output object, we will need to build a new object for each position. The object should include the following key value pairs. We're going to have our title, which is our position title, our total employees, which is going to be our count, right? Our average salary, which will be our total salaries that we've already captured, divided by the count. And then average bonus is going to be the same thing, just total bonuses we've captured divided by the count. And then our average total comp is going to be average salary plus average bonus. And we're basically going to create a object in our loop. We'll create all of the key value pairs, do all of the calculations that we need to. And once we've done that, we'll push it into an array. And then once we're done with calculating all of the needed objects inside our array, we'll then return the array, and our array should look identical to this, and this will be our final answer. So any questions on any of the pseudocode that I've written? Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll say let final result, it doesn't have to be final, we'll just call it results. And that's going to empty or equal an empty array. All right, and so let's make sure we're out of the if statement, we're out of that, we're out of our for loop. All right, and now we can say for and we can say key in parsed employees, right? So we go back to the slide deck here, right? If we're looping through an object, which we're looping through parsed employees, we can use a for in loop. All right, we talked about that during one of the other challenges a little while ago. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So we can do that, and we'll pull that in here. And then, so let's go ahead and take a look at key. Right, developer, product manager, designer. And if we take a look at the values, right, so there's our arrays. And same thing here, if I want salary, right, so there's my salaries, there's my bonuses, and there are my employee counts, right? So between just key and then parsed employee box key, box 0, 1, or 2, I can get all of the values that I need access to, right? And so inside my loop, let's go ahead and create a temp object. And we are going to say that temp object, and what do we need here? Let me just grab these. right? And so now this is how we create each of our keys, right? And so this is going to become key, right? And then total employees is going to be equal to our count. Average salary is going to be equal to so 0. So index position 0 divided by 2. And bonus will be index position divided by 1 divided by 2. And then total comp will equal, we can just do the math here as well. So we can just do 0 and 1. Right, and then so we'll just take a look at this here and we'll say console.log temp object. Right, and it looks like we've got some decimals there. Right, so how do we get rid of decimals? We can probably just do parse int, right? So our solution doesn't show any decimals, so let's go ahead and take u, say parse int u parse int u parse int. Well, let's take a look at it. That looks a lot better. So 127,333, 127,333, 140,333. All right, so feeling pretty good about that. And now we're not actually returning anything yet. So we're still returning undefined. But so now instead of console.logging temp object, we can take results dot push temp object, right? And now we can return results. And now we'll take this whole thing, wrap it in a console.log, and we'll run it. And so now we're inside of our array. We have an array of objects. Let's compare it. We've got a developer, 3 of them, salary, bonus, average total con, and it says AVT, that's a typo. Did I, okay. Let's fix that typo. Average total comp. That looks better, right? But looks like we got what we needed out of this, right? And so this is something where, again, by far and away, like this is the most difficult challenge in here. Like there is a lot of moving parts to it. But this is also realistic to what you would be doing as a web developer with capturing data and then also like basically having to modify it and display it in different ways or store it in different ways. So any questions on any of this?
No questions, but I definitely want to see if I could go do it and have the success. And thank you for going through it.
Yeah, and this is something that again, like there's certain things we could do to try and clean this up a little bit again, because these are just big, like, I mean, there's quite a bit of text here. There's lots of brackets. Each,
How would you simplify that without without completely derailing what you're trying to teach here? What is your recommendation?
so I would probably do something like this, like let PE or PE equal.
Okay, so you change the long string names to something shorter.
Yeah.
Okay,
So something
basically
like,
aliases.
yep. And then just do this, right?
Okay.
And it makes it more readable across the board.
Yeah.
Right? And this is something you'll like, it seems weird because now you're having to look in kind of like two different spots to figure it out, but this is pretty common when you're writing code, like where we have these big things, but unless I screwed something up, like I should still be able to run this, right? And the program still runs correctly. And the only other thing I'd say is something like this, because like we had talked about in an earlier lecture, like single responsibility, right? This function is actually doing two different things, right? So it's like parsing employee data, and then it's constructing like these position objects. And so the other thing I'd probably look at doing is taking this and moving it into its own function, taking this and moving it into its own function, and then basically making this a higher order function that just basically when you run the higher order function, it just calls the other two helper functions and it does the same thing. It just makes the code a little bit more organized. And then I would write, like I would title this function like employee data parser, and this one like I would call it like position data constructor or something like that, so it's more descriptive in what's actually happening within the function. So because the more of a story you can tell in your code, there's two people that whenever you're writing code, and this is like one of the absolute truths of the universe. So there's two people that you need to be nice to when you're writing code, and that's your people you're working with, and the most important one is your future self. And like the longer you write code, the more you'll have ran into your old code that you wrote before that you didn't know as much as you do now.
Why did I do
You'll be like,
that?
what idiot wrote this code? And then you'll look at it and be like, oh, that was me.
Yeah.
So, and that isn't something that we talked a lot about in here, but like all file management, like all what's called version management, is managed by Git, GIT. And so that's like GitHub, GitLab, Gitbucket, AWS code commit. So like when you start writing larger pieces of software, you need to track previous versions in case something goes wrong. And there's something called Git blame. And so once you are inside a Git enabled repository, every single line of code that's ever been written, it has someone's name stamped next to it. And then you have the ability to navigate back and forth through different versions of the software to see what the code looked like in the past and who wrote that code, which is super helpful to basically be able to go find people and be like, hey, you worked on this a year ago. I don't remember anything, if you remember anything about it, but like, could you tell me a little bit about it or whatever? But yeah, like, I mean, I've definitely on my project, because I've been on the same project for 3 years, I've been like, that's horrible code. I bet my name's next to it. And like when I hold my mouse over the line, like my name pops up and I'm like, yep, I thought I remember doing that. And just being like, and again, from 3 years ago, being like a brand new developer out of coding bootcamp to what I'm capable of doing today is a world of difference. So, yeah. That is very true, Leo. So Leo put in chat, when a programmer first creates his code, only he and God knows how it works. A few months down the line, only God knows. That is very true, especially if that developer leaves the project. So,
Yeah.
all right. Any other questions about this? All right, so give me 1 second here. I'm going to stop the recording for the evening.